Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The autumn air hung thick in the small town of Oakwood. Its streets lined with trees shedding their crimson and gold leaves. Nestled in the heart of this cozy community was the local library. An unassuming brick building that bore witness to the secrets of its residents. On an ordinary Wednesday morning, the townspeople shuffled in and out, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing just beneath the surface of their serene lives. Inside, the scent of musty paper intertwined with the faint aroma of coffee wafting from the corner cafe. This was a place where patrons came to escape reality, to lose themselves in stories woven by the minds of authors from years past. Yet on this morning, none of the library goers would anticipate that darkness would soon overshadow the comforting familiarity of their town. As the clock struck 10, a singular sound disrupted the tranquility, the crash of a heavy book falling from a shelf. Curiosity piqued. Claire Harper, the librarian, approached the sound. She pushed aside the row of encyclopedias and gazed down at the tattered novel lying open, its pages fluttering slightly as if whispering a cautionary tale. Claire glanced around. No one else was nearby. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The secrets hidden in these walls would soon reveal themselves, as Oakwood harbored shadows that even the brightest autumn sun could not dispel. The victim. The following day followed the same quiet pattern in Oakwood, but the air felt heavy, burdened by an unshakable tension. Word spread quickly that a local woman had gone missing. Lydia Miller, a 34-year-old schoolteacher, had last been seen leaving the library late in the afternoon. Her absence stirred unease throughout the community, invoking memories of other unsettling times when the town felt vulnerable to forces lurking just beyond the confines of familiarity. Lydia was well-liked, known for her enthusiasm for teaching literature. Her students adored her vibrant personality, often remarking that her classroom was a second home. Friends described her as witty and compassionate, always the first to lend an ear when needed. Yet, beneath her warm facade, lay a woman grappling with untold struggles. A recent divorce weighed heavily on her heart, a fracture that made her world feel less stable than before. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the winding streets, a search party convened at the library. Volunteers gathered to comb the area, calling her name into the growing darkness. Claire, the librarian, felt a pang of guilt as she recalled Lydia's last visit. Was there something she missed during their brief conversation? After all, it was unlike Lydia to vanish without a word. The town had never faced a crisis quite like this. Friends and family exchanged concerned glances, their pleas mingling with an underlying dread that clawed at the edges of their consciousness, of fear that perhaps Lydia would not return. The crime scene. As search efforts continued into the early morning hours, the air grew colder, and the palpable anxiety swirled like mist around the townspeople. Just as the first light of dawn began to fracture the darkness, a chill ran through the group gathered by the library. A local man found something near a walking trail that wound through the back of the property, a site that would mark the turning point in this unfolding tragedy. Officers arrived at the scene, their expressions strained with urgency. Claire stood off to the side, her heart racing as she watched the officers methodically examine the area. They promised the searchers that they would be respectful, that they would handle whatever lay ahead with care and discretion. Yet she could sense the weight of every unspoken word between them. An officer gestured toward something half hidden in the fallen leaves, and as Claire's gaze shifted toward the ground, her insides twisted into knots. There, beneath the mottled gold and brown foliage, lay a scrap of fabric, an unmistakable piece of Lydia's scarf, embroidered with a familiar floral pattern. Her breath caught in her throat. Surrounding the fabric, the earth seemed unnaturally disturbed. A small patch of land that gathered shadows in its depth. It was as if nature itself was trying to conceal a mystery too profound for the human eye. The air thickened with dread, muffling the sound of the radio crackling to life as officers called in their findings. Claire took a step back, her stomach churning. What had begun as a missing person case was slowly unraveling into something far more sinister. The early investigation. The discovery of Lydia's scarf sparked an immediate shift in the investigation. Within the hour, the buzz of police radios filled the air, and the small town found itself enveloped in the relentless rhythm of sirens and caution tape. Detectives, clad in dark suits, moved with purposeful urgency, their eyes scanning the scene for every detail. Detective Adam Sinclair, a seasoned investigator with over a decade of experience, led the team. He was known for his calm demeanor in the face of chaos, but beneath that facade lay a fierce determination to uncover the truth. As he paced around the perimeter of the crime scene, taking meticulous notes on his clipboard, his partner, Detective Rachel Torres, began gathering statements from the assembled searchers. "I last saw her when she checked out a book yesterday afternoon," Claire shared, her voice trembling slightly. "She seemed off that day, but I thought it was just the stress of her divorce." The detectives listened carefully, their expressions a blend of focus and empathy. Claire's words, rife with guilt, painted a portrait of Lydia that they would piece together like a puzzle throughout the investigation. Meanwhile, Detective Sinclair pointed out critical details: the angle of the disturbance in the ground, the absence of significant footprints, and the proximity to the trailer path known to be less traveled, inviting to both nature lovers and, frustratingly, those with darker intentions. Discussions of potential suspects began to emerge, but speculation would only muddle the investigation. For now, the detectives would rely on hard evidence, examining every possibility without losing sight of the human cost. Lydia's life hung in the balance, and with each tick of the clock, the pressure mounted to uncover the truth. The dead ends. Days turned into a week, and with each passing hour, Oakwood's hopes of finding Lydia alive began to fade. As Detective Sinclair and Detective Torres delved deeper, they encountered a series of dead ends that only heightened the sense of urgency. Numerous interviews yielded scant information. While the community was supportive, the locals had little to offer aside from their shared concern. Every name that surfaced seemed to lead nowhere. Friends described Lydia as reclusive. In the months following her divorce, only occasionally venturing into town activities. They mentioned a few colleagues who also seemed disconnected, but none could provide a motive or hint of conflict. The teachers at her school noted that Lydia never spoke ill of her ex-husband, even after the painful split. In the cold, fluorescent glow of the precinct, Sinclair and Torres obsessively pored over the notes on their desks, searching for overlooked details. Detective Torres leaned back in her chair, fatigue etched on her features. The library? Could there be something we're missing? Sinclair nodded, rubbing his temples. Maybe we need to look for something more than just, he spent so much time there. It could be more than just search. We should re-examine the security footage. The thought of missed visual evidence ignited a spark of determination in Sinclair. They soon found the footage from the library on the day Lydia disappeared, a monotonous reel of patrons browsing bookshelves. An unremarkable, yet a moment caught Sinclair's eye. A dark figure loomed near the entrance of the library, lingering just beyond the threshold as Lydia stepped out into the fading light. As they zoomed in on the grainy image, the unanswered questions multiplied. But the identity of the figure only deepened the mystery, leaving them with one heart-wrenching realization. The road forward would be longer and more treacherous than they had imagined. A break in the case. Just as hope began to wane, a breakthrough emerged. Detective Torres had spent hours poring over the library's security footage, scrutinizing not only the moments surrounding Lydia's departure, but also the hours prior. Her perseverance bore fruit when she noticed the dark figure again, this time clearly visible as they exited shortly after Lydia. Using the blurred video, Torres painstakingly identified a distinctive feature: a dark green jacket with a unique patch sewn onto the sleeve. Acting on instinct, she ran a quick search through local stores, hoping to identify where such a jacket might be purchased. Meanwhile, Sinclair took the initiative to track down known acquaintances of Lydia, specifically focusing on anyone who frequently frequented the library. Amidst the mundane routine of contacts, a name emerged: Daniel Fisk, a local drifter with a troubled history. He had not only been spotted loitering near the library, but had also received a restraining order for harassment against a different woman just 6 months prior. Sinclair and Torres wasted no time and decided to pay Daniel a visit at the dilapidated boarding house he called home. The air felt thick with anticipation as they approached the door. Inside, the faint sounds of a television flickering echoed through the hallway. After knocking, an anxious-looking man appeared, visibly startled at the sight of two detectives. His green jacket was draped unceremoniously over a chair, drawing a parallel to the figure in the footage. "Can we come in?" Sinclair asked, sensing the tension in the air. As Daniel opened the door wider and allowed them entry, the detectives exchanged glances, both silently acknowledging the possibility that this could be the lead they had desperately been searching for. Every moment was laden with the weight of potential revelations, hinting that the darkness of the past might just be the catalyst for uncovering the truth about Lydia's fate. The suspect, inside Daniel Fisk's cluttered room. The atmosphere felt almost suffocating, rife with the embers of discomfort. The detectives observed a motley collection of abandoned belongings strewn across the floor: crumpled fast food wrappers, empty bottles, and clothes that seemed to spill out of overflowing drawers. Daniel shifted nervously, his eyes darting toward the window and then back to Sinclair and Torres, clearly aware of the tension that enveloped the space. "Look, I haven't done anything wrong. I was just hanging out by the library," he stammered, his voice shaking slightly. Sinclair's steely gaze softened for just a moment, but he remained rooted in the present, unwilling to let sympathy sway his judgment. "Tell us about Lydia Miller," Torres interjected, her tone even but firm. As she spoke, she paced slowly around the room, searching for inconsistencies in Daniel's story, while also taking stock of his nervously tapping fingers and fidgeting posture. "I don't know her, I swear. I was just looking for a place to spend some time," he replied, avoiding eye contact. The more he spoke, the more the gaps in his alibi began to show. Sinclair pressed on, asking about his whereabouts the afternoon Lydia mysteriously disappeared. Daniel struggled to maintain an unbothered facade, offering compulsive explanation half-hearted attempts that only amplified the suspicion in the room. "Your jacket," Torres said suddenly, pointing at the dark green fabric hanging on the chair. "Looks quite familiar. Care to explain where you got it?" Daniel's face blanched, the flicker of guilt evident in the widening of his eyes. "I found it," he mumbled. But in a town where small talk could ignite rumors, that simple statement would provoke more questions than answers. As the tension thickened, the detectives shared a quick, knowing glance. They were edging closer to an unsettling truth. Daniel's connection to Lydia would soon prove pivotal, a tangled thread leading deeper into the web of mystery surrounding her disappearance. The trial. Months passed, marked by the pulsating rhythm of cautious optimism as authorities worked meticulously to piece together the evidence against Daniel Fisk. The quiet town of Oakwood was forever altered by Lydia Miller's disappearance. But when authorities announced the decision to charge Fisk with her murder, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation and dread. The courtroom was a microcosm of the community's collective grief and desire for justice. People filled the benches, whispering among themselves while casting nervous glances at the defendant, who sat at the front, an island of fraught tension amidst the sea of observers. As the trial commenced, it became evident that the prosecution held a compelling case, juxtaposed against the whisper of reasonable doubt that Daniel's defense tried to sow. Each witness took their turn, recounting the impact of Lydia's absence on their lives, building a powerful emotional narrative that compelled the jury's attentiveness. Claire, the librarian, was among the first called to testify. She spoke about Lydia's love for literature, the last book she read, and the indefinable weight of sorrow that settled heavily on her heart as she remembered that fateful day. As the trial unfolded, the prosecution presented surveillance footage that identified Daniel in the vicinity of the library, a chilling depiction of the events leading up to Lydia's vanishing. Forensic evidence revealed fibers matching Lydia's scarf found in Daniel's possession, leading the courtroom into an uncomfortable silence, the implications settling like lead in the stomachs of those in attendance. Yet the defense brought forth an unexpected twist, a lack of direct evidence linking Daniel to Lydia's actual disappearance. The question hung in the air like an unanswered prayer. Was it enough to secure a conviction if the truth of what happened remained elusive? As closing arguments commenced, the weight of doubt loomed large. The jury faced an agonizing decision. The air felt thick, amplifying the collective heartbeat echoing through the courtroom, a city's plea for closure resting heavily upon them. The aftermath. As the jury delivered their verdict, the tension in the courtroom shattered like delicate glass. The gavel echoed with authority, sealing Daniel Fisk's fate, guilty of second-degree murder. Gasps filled the air, a blend of relief and sorrow rippling through the attendees. For Lydia's family and friends, The verdict brought a bittersweet sense of closure, but did little to alleviate the pang of loss that reverberated throughout the community. The weeks following the trial transformed Oakwood into a landscape of hushed conversations and wavering trust. Neighbors, once bound by small-town camaraderie, found themselves navigating a new reality marked by fear and unease. In cafes and shops, the glances exchanged spoke volumes. The innocence of their close-knit community had been shattered, replaced by an unsettling awareness of the darkness that could lurk within. Claire returned to the library, each day carrying the weight of Lydia's memory alongside her role as a custodian of stories. She felt an indescribable emptiness in the quiet corners of the building, where laughter and camaraderie once thrived. Readers who would have once rejoiced in the simple pleasure of a book now approached the library with tentative caution, whispering Lydia's name in reverence and sorrow. Meanwhile, Detective Sinclair and Detective Torres reflected on the case that would stay lodged in their hearts. The right outcome had been achieved, but at a steep cost. They walked the familiar streets of Oakwood, purposefully observing the changes that had permeated the town since the fateful events began. Together, they resolved to advocate not only for justice, but also healing for those left behind, wandering through the aftermath of loss. Weeks became months, and though the sun still rose and set over Oakwood, the shadows cast by Lydia's absence lingered, whispering to anyone who had dared to forget. The fragile threads holding the town together began to mend, but the scars of tragedy would forever remain etched in its history. Reflection. As the seasons shifted from the golden hues of autumn to the muted grays of winter, Oakwood settled into an uneasy calm. Residents navigated the town with a mixture of resilience and lingering uncertainty, forever marked by the shadow of Lydia Miller's disappearance. Those who had known her often found themselves reflecting on their lives, questioning the fragility of what they once took for granted. Claire walked the streets she had spent countless hours traversing, now tinged with memories both haunting and cherished. With each passing day, she felt a growing obligation to preserve Lydia's story, to ensure that the life and spirit of her friend would not be forgotten. She organized a memorial in the town square, a gathering to honor those lost and those still searching for closure. The cold breeze carried the warmth of shared laughter and sorrow, a bittersweet reminder of the ties that bind communities amid darkness. As people came together, emotions poured forth, heartfelt stories, tears, and laughter mingled in a cathartic release. For the first time in months, there was hope. A flicker that glowed bright against the lingering shadow. In the end, Lydia's journey became a conduit for healing, a catalyst for compassion and understanding that transcended the pain of loss. Though the threads of tragedy had woven themselves into the fabric of Oakwood's story, those threads also stitched together a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to watch over one another, to stay vigilant, and to never forget the intricate tapestry of every life that intertwines with another.